cruel mistress makes orphan her maid, not knowing she's the lost heir to a billionaire empire. The slap came without warning. 18-year-old Alara Vance's head snapped to the side, her cheek exploding with pain, the bucket of dirty water in her hands sloshing onto the marble floor she'd just spent 3 hours scrubbing on her hands and knees. "You missed a spot," Serafina Thorne said, her voice dripping with contempt. She stood above Alara in a designer dress that probably cost more than Alara would earn in 5 years, her perfectly manicured finger pointing to an invisible imperfection. "Start over. All of it. And if you're not finished by the time my guests arrive for tonight's gala, you'll sleep in the shed." Again. Alara pressed her hand to her burning cheek and said nothing. She'd learned 18 months ago that speaking back only made things worse. "Did you hear me, you worthless little orphan?" "Yes, ma'am," Alara whispered. Serafina's smile was cruel. "Good. And take off that ridiculous necklace. It's tarnished and ugly and makes you look even more pathetic than you already are." Alara's hand flew instinctively to her throat, to the small silver locket hidden beneath her stained uniform. The only thing she owned. The only connection to a past she couldn't remember. "No," she said before she could stop herself. The second slap was harder. "What did you say to me?" "I'll take it off," Alara lied, tucking it deeper under her collar where Serafina couldn't see it. "I'm sorry." Serafina's eyes narrowed, but she was already bored with the confrontation. She had more important things to do than discipline the help. Tonight's party would make or break her. She needed to find a wealthy husband before the banks foreclosed on Thorne Manor and everyone discovered the Thorne family fortune was nothing but debt and desperation. "You have 4 hours," Serafina said, her heels clicking away on the marble Alara would now have to scrub again. "Don't disappoint me." Alara waited until the clicking faded, until she was alone in the vast, cold entrance hall of Thorne Manor, before she let herself shake. 18 months of this. 18 months of being screamed at, slapped, starved, worked until her hands bled and her back screamed, and exhaustion made her hallucinate. 18 months of sleeping in an unheated servant's room barely bigger than a closet, of eating table scraps when Serafina remembered to feed her at all, of being treated like she was less than human. She was one of dozens of orphans who'd aged out of the system with nowhere to go. The placement agency had called Thorne Manor a live-in domestic position with room and board. They'd made it sound like an opportunity. They'd lied. Alara picked up the scrub brush with trembling hands and started over. She didn't know that 4 floors above her, in the master bedroom, Serafina was panicking over the guest list for tonight's gala. She didn't know that among the 100 wealthy attendees was a man named Adrian Sterling, the brilliant, ruthless attorney for Sterling Global Industries, a multi-billion-dollar empire that had been searching for its lost heir for 18 years. She didn't know that Adrian had spent the last 6 months tracking down a single piece of evidence, a police report from 18 years ago about an infant found near a coastal car crash, wearing a distinctive silver locket engraved with a Sterling family crest. And she definitely didn't know that the locket she wore, the one she'd had for as long as she could remember, the one she'd protected through foster homes and group facilities, and the hell of Thorne Manor, was worth more than every asset Serafina Thorne had ever owned. Because Alara Vance wasn't an orphan. She was Alara Sterling, the lost daughter of billionaire industrialist Victoria Sterling, who died in that coastal crash 18 years ago. The sole heir to a fortune worth $7 billion. And in exactly 4 hours, Adrian Sterling was going to walk into Thorne Manor, see that locket around the neck of an abused maid, and destroy Serafina, Thorne's entire world. Hey everyone! Welcome to a story about justice, hidden identities, and the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen. I am so thrilled you're here. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I love connecting with you all around the world. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now because this story is going to take you from absolute cruelty to the sweetest vindication, and you don't want to miss a single moment. We're talking Cinderella meets corporate dynasty, with a villain so evil you'll be cheering when she falls. Hit that subscribe button. You won't regret it. Now let's get back to Alara, because she has no idea her entire life is about to change in the most dramatic way possible. 3 hours and 45 minutes until the gala. Alara's hands were raw and bleeding from the harsh cleaning solution Serafina insisted she use. Her knees ached from hours on the cold marble. Her empty stomach cramped. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning when she'd stolen a piece of bread from the kitchen and been caught by Serafina's head housekeeper, Mrs. Pemberton. The punishment had been skipping dinner and breakfast. The marble floor gleamed now, perfect and spotless. Alara moved to the grand staircase, where she was expected to polish every one of the 43 steps before the guests arrived. She was halfway through when she heard footsteps behind her. Mrs. Pemberton appeared, looking harried and anxious. Unlike Serafina, Mrs. Pemberton wasn't deliberately cruel. She was just afraid of losing her job, which made her complicit in everything that happened to Alara. "Miss Thorne wants you to serve tonight," Mrs. Pemberton said, not meeting Alara's eyes. Alara's blood ran cold. What? 2 of the catering staff called in sick. You'll need to put on a serving uniform and work the party. Drinks, appetizers, clearing plates. You know the drill. I've never worked a formal event. Then you'll learn quickly. Miss Thorne has already said if you embarrass her in front of her guests, she'll terminate your employment. Mrs. Pemberton's voice dropped. Alara, please. Just do what she says. Don't give her a reason. Employment. Like Alara had a choice about being here. Like she could just leave and go somewhere else. Where would she go? She had no money, no family, no references that didn't come from Serafina. She was trapped, and they both knew it. What time? Alara asked quietly. Guests arrive at 7. You need to be in uniform and ready by 6:30. Mrs. Pemberton hesitated. There's a clean server uniform in the laundry room. It might be too big, but make it work. And Alara? Hide that necklace. Miss Thorne doesn't like you wearing it. It's under my uniform. Hide it better. She's in a mood today. Everything has to be perfect. Mrs. Pemberton turned to leave, then paused. And try to eat something. You look half dead. She left before Alara could point out that looking half dead was what happened when you were systematically starved and worked past human endurance. Alara finished the stairs, her mind spinning. Serving at the gala meant being visible, meant being around wealthy people who'd look right through her like she didn't exist. She'd learned that the rich had a special talent for not seeing the help. But it also meant food. The catering staff always had access to the kitchen. If she was careful, if she was smart, she could eat something before Serafina noticed. The hunger made the decision for her. At 6:15, Alara stood in the servants' bathroom, staring at herself in the cracked mirror. The server uniform hung off her too-thin frame. She'd lost weight in the 18 months at Thorne Manor, weight she couldn't afford to lose. Her face was pale, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun that made her look older than 18. She looked exactly like what she was, a girl who'd been broken down and ground into nothing. But the locket was still there, tucked safely under the high collar of the uniform. Alara touched it through the fabric, feeling the familiar shape. She'd had it as long as she could remember. The social workers said it had been with her when she was found as an infant, abandoned at a hospital. No note, no explanation, just a baby and a tarnished silver locket. She'd never been able to open it. The clasp was stuck, fused shut by time or design. But she'd never tried very hard. The locket was hers. It was the only thing in the world that belonged to her. She didn't need to open it to know it mattered. Voices in the hallway pulled her from her thoughts. The catering staff was arriving. The party was beginning. Alara took a breath, tucked the locket deeper, and went to join them. The grand ballroom of Thorn Manor had been transformed. Crystal chandeliers blazed with light. Flowers worth thousands of dollars filled every corner. A string quartet played in the corner. And everywhere, were wealthy people in expensive clothes, drinking champagne and pretending Seraphina Thorn was still part of their world. Alara moved through them like a ghost, carrying trays of champagne, offering appetizers, clearing empty glasses. No one looked at her. No one saw her. She was furniture. Background. Nothing. Seraphina held court in the center of the room, wearing a dress that probably represented her last desperate attempt to look solvent. She laughed too loud, touched arms too much, performed wealth and happiness like her life depended on it. Because it did. More champagne, a woman demanded, snapping her fingers at Alara without looking. Alara refilled her glass, silently. These appetizers are divine, someone else said. Seraphina, darling, you must give me your caterer's number. Seraphina's smile was tight. She'd paid for this party, with credit cards she couldn't afford. Every detail was borrowed, rented, or bought with money she didn't have. Alara knew because she'd heard Seraphina screaming at her accountant 3 days ago, throwing things, demanding he find money that didn't exist. The Thorn family was bankrupt. The manor was mortgaged to the rafters. And Seraphina was 1 bad month away from losing everything, which was why tonight mattered. Why Seraphina had invited every eligible bachelor with a trust fund, hoping one of them would be drunk and desperate enough to marry her. Alara was refilling champagne glasses near the entrance when the door opened and a man walked in who made the entire room shift. He was maybe 35, tall and sharp in an immaculately tailored suit. Dark hair, ice blue eyes, and the kind of presence that suggested he was used to being the most important person in any room. Seraphina spotted him immediately, her predatory instincts activating. Adrian Sterling, she purred, gliding across the room. I'm so honored you could attend. I know you're impossibly busy. Adrian Sterling. The name meant nothing to Alara. Just another rich man at another party full of rich people. But to everyone else in the room, the name meant everything. Sterling Global Industries. $7 billion in assets. Real estate, technology, manufacturing. One of the most powerful family empires in the country. And Adrian Sterling was its sole controller since the tragic death of Victoria Sterling 18 years ago. Miss Thorn, Adrian said politely. Thank you for the invitation. Please call me Seraphina. She took his arm possessively. Let me introduce you to some people. I think you'll find tonight's guest list very impressive. Alara watched them move into the crowd, then went back to serving. She didn't see Adrian's eyes sweep the room with methodical precision. She didn't see him catalog every face, every detail, every possibility. She didn't see him looking for something. Someone. Looking for a silver locket that had been missing for 18 years. Looking for the heir everyone believed was dead. looking for the one person who could claim the Sterling fortune and change everything. And she definitely didn't see the moment Adrian's gaze landed on her, on the maid carrying champagne, and stopped. Because even hidden under her uniform collar, the chain of the locket was barely visible. A thin silver chain that caught the chandelier light for just a moment. A chain Adrian had been searching for across 3 continents and 18 years. His entire body went still. He'd found her. And there it is. The moment everything changes. Adrian just spotted the locket. Alara has no idea who she is. Serafina has no idea her world is about to end. If you need to know what happens next, if you have to see the moment Alara discovers the truth, hit that subscribe button right now. This is just the beginning, and I promise you, the vindication is going to be so sweet.
Subscribe.
And let's watch Serafina's empire crumble together. Adrian Sterling had learned to trust his instincts. 18 years of running a multi-billion-dollar empire, of navigating corporate warfare and hostile takeovers, had taught him that the details everyone else missed were usually the ones that mattered most. And right now, every instinct he had was screaming at him to look at the maid. She was too thin, moving through the crowd with the careful invisibility of someone who'd learned that being noticed meant being hurt. Dark hair pulled back severely, uniform hanging off her frame, face pale with exhaustion, and around her neck, barely visible beneath her collar, a thin silver chain. Adrian forced himself to turn back to Serafina, to smile politely at whatever vapid things she was saying about the guest list. But his mind was racing. 18 years ago, Victoria Sterling had died in a car crash on the coastal highway. Her infant daughter, 6-month-old Alara Sterling, had been in the car. The official report said the baby's body was never recovered, swept out to sea in the storm. But Adrian had never believed it. Victoria had been his mentor, his friend, the woman who'd built Sterling Global from nothing and turned it into an empire. She'd been brilliant, fierce, and deeply paranoid about her family's safety. She told Adrian, 3 weeks before her death, that she suspected someone in the family was trying to kill her. That if anything happened, he needed to find Alara. Protect her. He'd failed. The police investigation concluded it was an accident. The family closed ranks, and baby Alara Sterling was declared dead, her inheritance absorbed into the family trust, controlled by Victoria's younger brother, Richard Sterling. Richard, who'd been drowning in gambling debts when Victoria died. Richard, who'd suddenly become solvent again within months of the accident. Richard, who'd fought every one of Adrian's attempts to investigate, to question, to demand answers. For 18 years, Adrian had searched, followed threads that led nowhere, chased shadows and whispers, spent millions of the Sterling fortune trying to find proof that Alara had survived. And 3 months ago, he'd finally found it. A police report from a small coastal hospital. A baby girl, approximately 6 months old, found abandoned in the emergency room on the same night as Victoria's crash.
No identification.
No note. Just an infant and a distinctive silver locket engraved with what the officer had described as some kind of family crest. The Sterling family crest. Adrian had been tracking that locket ever since, through hospital records and social services databases and foster care placements. The trail had gone cold 6 times. But he'd kept searching, kept following the fragments. Until yesterday, when he'd found a notation in an old case file. A girl named Alara Vance, aged out of foster care, placed in a live-in domestic position. At Thorn Manor. Adrian had called in favors to get an invitation to tonight's gala. had come prepared to search the house, to find the girl, to see if the impossible was actually true. He hadn't expected to find her serving champagne. "Mr. Sterling? Adrian?" Serafina's voice cut through his thoughts. "You seem distracted. My apologies. I was just admiring your home." He smiled, deploying the charm he'd perfected in countless boardrooms. "It's quite remarkable. Historic, I imagine?" Serafina's eyes lit up. She loved talking about the manor, about the Thorne legacy, about everything that made her feel superior to the poverty she was desperately hiding. "Built in 1887 by my great-great-grandfather," she said. "It's been in the family for generations. I've put considerable effort into maintaining it to its original grandeur." The lie was smooth. Adrian happened to know that Thorne Manor was mortgaged 3 times over and 1 payment away from foreclosure. But he nodded appreciatively. "I'd love a tour sometime. I'm always interested in historic properties." "I'd be delighted." Serafina moved closer, her hand on his arm. "Perhaps after the party? A private tour?" The invitation was clear. Serafina Thorne was hunting for a wealthy husband, and Adrian Sterling was the biggest prize in the room. He was about to deflect when movement caught his eye. The maid, stumbling slightly as an older woman in pearls shoved an empty glass at her without looking. The girl caught the glass, mumbled an apology, even though it wasn't her fault, and hurried toward the kitchen. Adrian made a decision. "Actually, I'd love some air." "Your garden, perhaps?" "Of course." Serafina gestured toward the terrace. "This way." But Adrian's attention was on the girl disappearing through the service entrance. He needed to see that locket. Needed to confirm what his instincts were screaming at him. "Excuse me for just a moment," he said. "I need to make a call. Business emergency. You understand." Serafina's smile tightened, but she nodded. "Of course. The library is private if you need quiet." Adrian headed toward the library, then doubled back the moment Serafina's attention was diverted. He moved through the house with the confidence of someone who belonged, following the service corridors toward the kitchen. Alara's hands shook as she set down the tray of empty glasses. The kitchen was chaos. Catering staff rushing, ovens blazing, the head chef screaming about timing. No one paid attention to the skinny maid in the corner, which meant she could finally eat. There were appetizers set aside for staff, but Alara knew better than to take those. If Serafina found out, there would be punishment. Instead, she scraped what was left on plates being returned from the ballroom. Half a crostini, a few grapes, a piece of cheese. It was pathetic, humiliating, but it was food. She ate quickly, furtively, always watching the door for Mrs. Pemberton or worse, for Serafina herself. "You there, girl." Alara jumped, nearly dropping the plate. A man stood in the kitchen doorway. The same man Serafina had been fawning over. Adrian Sterling. He looked completely out of place in the industrial kitchen, his expensive suit and commanding presence making the space feel smaller. "I need more champagne for the library," he said. "Can you bring a bottle?" It was a lie. Alara could tell by the way his eyes weren't quite focused on her face, but on her throat, on the chain of the locket. "Of course, sir," she said quietly, setting down the scraped plate and wiping her hands on her uniform. "Right away." She grabbed a bottle from the cooler, grateful for the excuse to leave the kitchen before anyone noticed she'd been eating scraps. Adrian held the door for her, then followed her through the service corridor toward the library. "What's her name?" he asked. "Alara, sir." "Alara." He said it like he was tasting it. "Testing it." "How long have you worked here?" 18 months, sir. And before that, she glanced at him, confused by the questions. Wealthy people didn't usually care about the help's history. Foster care, sir. I aged out of the system. Family? None, sir. They reached the library. It was empty, quiet, lined with books that Serafina probably never read. Alara set the champagne on the side table. Will there be anything else? Yes. Adrian's voice was gentle now. I need to ask you about your necklace. Alara's hand flew to her throat, protective. It's not valuable. It's mine. I know. I'm not trying to take it. He stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. But I need to see it.
Please.
It's important.
Why?
Because I think it belongs to someone I've been looking for. Someone who's been lost for a very long time. Alara's heart hammered. I don't understand. The locket. May I see it? Every survival instinct told her to refuse.
To run.
To protect the one thing that was hers. But something in Adrian's eyes stopped her. Not cruelty. Not manipulation. Something else. Hope, maybe. Or recognition. Slowly, she pulled the locket out from under her collar. Adrian's breath caught. The Sterling family crest. Unmistakable, even tarnished with age. An eagle and 3 stars, surrounding the letter S. Where did you get this? His voice was rough. I've always had it. Since I was a baby. The social workers said it was with me when I was found. Found where? A hospital. On the coast. 18 years ago. Alara's voice was barely a whisper.
Why?
What does it mean? Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and saw what he'd been searching for all these years. Dark hair, like Victoria's. The same sharp cheekbones. The same eyes, though hollow with malnutrition and abuse. Alara, he said carefully, I need to ask you something, and I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She wanted to say no, wanted to run, but she nodded. Have you ever opened the locket? I can't. It's stuck. Adrian pulled a small knife from his pocket, the kind wealthy men carried for opening letters. May I try? She should refuse. Should protect it. But she handed it to him with shaking hands. Adrian worked the clasp carefully, precisely. After a moment, it clicked open. Inside was a photograph. Tiny, faded, but unmistakable. A woman holding an infant. Both of them smiling. Do you know who this is? Adrian asked. Alara stared at the photo. The woman looked familiar in a way she couldn't explain. Like a dream she'd half forgotten.
No.
This is Victoria Sterling, one of the most powerful businesswomen in the country. She died 18 years ago in a car accident. Adrian's voice was gentle. And this baby she's holding is her daughter, Alara Sterling, the heir to a $7 billion fortune. The room spun. That's impossible. The baby was never found. Everyone assumed she died. But I think she survived. I think she was taken by someone who wanted her to disappear. Adrian looked at her. I think you're Alara Sterling. And I think I've finally found you. Alara stumbled backward, the words hitting her like physical blows. That's insane. I can't be, her voice cracked.
I'm nobody.
I'm an orphan. I'm a maid. You're Alara Sterling, Adrian said firmly. And I can prove it.
How?
With an old photograph and a locket? That doesn't prove anything. It proves everything when combined with the hospital records, the date you were found, the location, and the fact that you have the Sterling family birthmark. Alara froze. What birthmark? Victoria Sterling had a distinctive mark on her left shoulder blade, a port wine stain shaped like a crescent moon. It's genetic.
Rare.
If you have it, that's biological proof. Adrian's eyes were intense. Do you? Alara's hand moved unconsciously to her left shoulder. She'd always had a mark there. Had been teased about it in group homes, called Moon Girl by the meaner kids. I have a mark, she whispered. But that doesn't mean. It means you're her daughter. Combined with the locket, the timeline, the location you were found, it's irrefutable. Adrian pulled out his phone. I need to make some calls. Get a DNA test arranged, proper documentation, legal counsel. Stop. Alara's voice was stronger now. Stop talking like this is real. I've spent 18 years being nobody. Being nothing. You can't just walk in here and tell me I'm someone important because of a necklace and a birthmark. I'm not telling you you're important because of wealth or inheritance, Adrian said quietly. I'm telling you you're important because you're Victoria Sterling's daughter. Because you survived when everyone said you died. Because someone tried to erase you and failed.
Who?
Who would do that? I don't know yet, but I have suspicions. Adrian's expression darkened. Your mother was killed in that accident, Alara. I don't think it was random. I think someone in the family orchestrated it to gain control of the company. And I think they took you, an infant, and left you at a hospital to die anonymous and forgotten. Then why didn't they just kill me? Because killing a baby leaves evidence, bodies, investigations. But abandoning one? In the chaos of a major accident? No one looks twice at another orphan in the system. His voice was bitter. You were meant to disappear. And you did. Until now. The door to the library burst open. Serafina stood there, her face flushed with anger and champagne.
What are you doing in here?
The library is off limits during the party. She stopped, her eyes landing on Alara.
You.
Why aren't you serving? My fault, Adrian said smoothly. I asked her to bring champagne and then kept her talking. I was curious about the history of the house. Serafina's eyes narrowed, moving between Adrian and Alara. The help doesn't know anything about the house history. She's barely literate. Her gaze landed on the locket, now visible outside Alara's collar. And I told you to take off that disgusting necklace. Actually, Adrian said, his voice going cold, that necklace is quite valuable. Historically and monetarily. It's tarnished junk from a thrift store. It's a Sterling family heirloom, worth approximately $50,000 to a collector. Adrian's smile was sharp. I know because I've been tracking it for 3 months. The air in the room changed. Serafina's expression shifted from annoyance to calculation. You've been tracking a necklace?
Why?
Because it belonged to Victoria Sterling. It was with her daughter when she disappeared 18 years ago. Adrian turned to Alara. And I believe this young woman is that daughter. Serafina laughed. It was harsh, mocking. This girl? This pathetic little orphan is a Sterling? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Is it? She has the family birthmark. The locket. She was found at a coastal hospital on the exact night of Victoria Sterling's death, at the exact age Alara Sterling would have been. Adrian's voice was steel. I'd say that's more than coincidence. Serafina's face went pale, then red. Get out. Excuse me?
Get
out of my house. Both of you. She pointed at Alara. You're fired. Gather your things and leave immediately. You can't fire me. I have nowhere. I can do whatever I want. You're nothing. You have no rights, no protections, no one who cares if you live or die on the street. Serafina's voice rose. Now get out before I call the police and have you arrested for theft. Theft of what? Adrian asked dangerously. That locket. It's mine. It was found on my property. The locket was with Alara when she arrived here 18 months ago. Your own housekeeper can verify that. Adrian stepped between Serafina and Alara. And if you try to claim otherwise, I'll bury you in legal motions so fast you won't know what happened. How dare you threaten me in my own home? It's not your home. It's the bank's home. You're 3 payments behind on your mortgage and 1 bad week from foreclosure. Adrian's smile was cold. I did my research before I came here, Miss Thorne. I know exactly how desperate you are. Serafina looked like she'd been slapped. Now, Adrian continued, Alara is going to gather her belongings. She's going to leave with me, and you're going to let her go without any further harassment. Because if you don't, I'll make sure every person at this party knows that the Thorne family fortune is a fiction and you're 1 scandal away from bankruptcy. You wouldn't dare try me? The standoff lasted 5 seconds. Then Serafina's composure cracked.
Fine.
Take her. Take the delusional little liar. But when you realize she's conning you, when the DNA test proves she's nobody, don't come crying to me. She looked at Alara with pure venom. You're pathetic. You'll always be pathetic. And no fancy lawyer is going to change that. She stormed out, slamming the door. Alara stood frozen, shaking. Pack your things, Adrian said gently. Quickly. Before she changes her mind or does something worse. I don't understand what's happening. You're leaving.
Right now.
You're never coming back to this house, never serving another meal, never scrubbing another floor. Adrian's voice was firm but kind. You're coming with me. We'll do the DNA test, prove your identity, and then you'll claim what's rightfully yours. And if the test is wrong, if I'm not who you think I am, then I'll still get you away from here. I'll still make sure you're safe and have a future. He met her eyes. But I'm not wrong, Alara. I've been looking for you for 18 years. I know exactly who you are. Alara wanted to believe him, wanted desperately to believe that she mattered, that she was someone, that the life she'd been living was a mistake rather than what she deserved. But 18 years of being told she was worthless made belief almost impossible. Okay, she whispered. I'll pack my things. She left the library, her mind spinning, and made her way to the servants' quarters. Her room was barely larger than a closet. A narrow bed with a thin blanket. A single drawer for her clothes. No heat, no privacy, no comfort. She'd lived here for 18 months, and it had never felt like anything but a prison. Alara pulled out her 1 bag, the same battered backpack she'd had since foster care, and packed everything she owned. 3 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, a book she'd found in the Manor's library and kept hidden, the photograph of her mother from the locket. That was it. 18 years of life fit into a single backpack. She was almost finished when the door opened. Mrs. Pemberton stood there looking stricken. Is it true? Are you really leaving? Miss Thorne fired me. Because of that man? The one from the party. Mrs. Pemberton stepped inside, closed the door. Alara, be careful. I don't know what he told you, but men like that don't help girls like us without wanting something. He thinks I'm someone else. Someone important. And you believe him? Alara looked at the locket in her hand, at the photograph of a woman who might be her mother, at the possibility of a life that wasn't this. I don't know what I believe, but I know I can't stay here. Mrs. Pemberton's eyes filled with tears.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry I never stood up for you. I'm sorry I let her treat you the way she did. I was afraid of losing my job, and that made me a coward. It's okay. It's not okay. Nothing about what happened to you here was okay. She pressed something into Alara's hand. This is my sister's address in Portland. If things go wrong with this man, if you need help, go there.
Tell her I sent you.
She'll take you in. Alara looked at the paper, at this small kindness from a woman who'd watched her suffer for 18 months. Thank you, she whispered. She shouldered her backpack and walked out of the servants' quarters for the last time. Adrian was waiting in the kitchen. He'd retrieved his coat and looked ready to leave immediately. Ready? Yes. They walked toward the service exit, but Serafina's voice stopped them. Alara. She stood in the doorway, her party still going on behind her, her face a mask of cold fury. You think you're so special now, don't you? You think this man is going to save you. Her laugh was cruel. But you're forgetting something. I have connections, lawyers, resources. And if you try to claim you're a Sterling, if you dare to embarrass me by making these ridiculous accusations, I will destroy you. I will make sure everyone knows you're a con artist, a liar, a disturbed girl who invented a fantasy to escape her pathetic reality. You're welcome to try, Adrian said coldly. But I suggest you worry more about your own reality, like the fraud investigation that's about to be opened into your family's finances, or the labor violation complaints I'll be filing regarding Alara's treatment here, or the fact that in approximately 72 hours, when the DNA results confirm what I already know, you'll have publicly threatened and harassed the heir to a $7 billion fortune. Serafina's face went white. Sleep well, Miss Thorne, Adrian said. You have about 3 days left of this life. I suggest you enjoy them. He guided Alara out the door, into the night, away from Thorne Manor and everything it represented. A car was waiting, black, expensive, with a driver who opened the door without question. Alara slid into the back seat, her backpack on her lap, her entire world turned upside down. Adrian got in beside her. Take us to the Sterling building, he told the driver. As the car pulled away, Alara looked back at the manor, at the place that had been her prison, and saw Serafina standing in the doorway, watching her leave, rage and fear written across her perfect face. Then the car turned a corner and Thorne Manor disappeared.
Gone.
Finally gone. Alara should have felt relief. Freedom.
Joy.
Instead, she felt terror. Because if Adrian was right, if she really was Alara Sterling, then everything was about to change in ways she couldn't even imagine. And if he was wrong, then she'd just traded one nightmare for another. Stop. If you're not subscribed right now, what are you even doing? This is the moment. Alara just walked away from her abuser. Adrian just declared war on Serafina. The DNA test is coming. The truth is about to explode. You cannot miss what happens next. Hit that subscribe button like your life depends on it. Smash that like button. The Sterling building dominated the San Francisco skyline. 60 floors of glass and steel that represented power and wealth on a scale Alara couldn't comprehend. Adrian's private office occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Art that belonged in museums hung on the walls. Furniture that cost more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes filled the space. And sitting in the corner, looking uncomfortable and out of place, was Alara. It had been 6 hours since they'd left Thorne Manor. 6 hours of medical examinations, DNA samples, legal documents, and Adrian making phone calls in rapid succession, orchestrating something Alara didn't fully understand. A woman in a white coat had photographed the birthmark on her shoulder blade, taken blood samples, and assured Alara the DNA results would be expedited. 72 hours maximum, 48 if they paid extra. They were paying extra. Now, at 2 a.m, Adrian was still working, reviewing documents, preparing for what he kept calling the reveal. "You should sleep," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "There's a suite attached to this office. Full bedroom, bathroom, everything you need." "I'm not tired."
A lie.
Alara was exhausted, but sleeping meant letting her guard down, and she wasn't ready for that. "Then eat something." "When was the last time you had a real meal?" "I ate at the party." "You ate scraps off return plates." "I saw you." Adrian's voice was gentle. "There's a kitchen. Or I can order anything you want. Name it." Alara stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" "Which part?" "All of it. The DNA test, the lawyer, the threats to Serafina. If I'm not who you think I am, you've wasted a fortune on nothing." Adrian closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. "Do you know how much Sterling Global is worth?" "You said 7 billion. 7.3 billion, as of yesterday's market close. Do you know what I make as the acting administrator of that fortune?" Alara shook her head. $5 million a year.
Plus bonus.
Plus stock options. "I'm a very wealthy man because I've been managing your inheritance for 18 years. He leaned forward. "If you are Alara Sterling, when you claim your inheritance, I lose that position. I lose that income. I become just another corporate attorney instead of one of the most powerful men in California. Then why help me? Because Victoria Sterling was my friend. Because she trusted me to protect her daughter. And because some things matter more than money." His eyes were fierce. "I watched your mother build this empire from nothing. Watched her fight every day to prove she deserved respect in a world that wanted to dismiss her as just another pretty face. And then I watched someone destroy her and steal everything she'd built. If there's even a chance her daughter survived, I will move heaven and earth to give you what's rightfully yours. Even if it costs you everything? Especially then." Adrian smiled slightly. "Besides, I'm very good at what I do. I'll find another job." Before Alara could respond, Adrian's phone rang.
He
Looked at the screen and his expression darkened. "It's Richard Sterling, your uncle." He answered on speaker. "Richard, it's late. Cut the bullshit, Adrian." The voice on the other end was male, angry, slurred slightly with alcohol. "I just got a very interesting call from Serafina Thorne. She says you're claiming to have found my niece. My very dead niece." "Not dead. Very much alive." "That's impossible. Alara died 18 years ago. Alara was abandoned at a hospital 18 years ago. There's a difference." Adrian's voice was steel. "I have the police reports, the hospital records, and a DNA test in progress. In 48 hours, I'll have biological proof." Silence on the other end. "Then, you're insane. Or being conned. That girl, whoever she is playing you." "I don't think so." "Then let me meet her. Let me verify this claim before you make a fool of yourself and damage the Sterling reputation with false hopes." Adrian looked at Alara, the question in his eyes. She shook her head violently. Every instinct screamed danger. "Not until the DNA results are confirmed," Adrian said. "If she's verified as Alara Sterling, You'll meet her at the formal reading of Victoria's sealed will. What's sealed will? The one Victoria created 3 weeks before her death and left in my care, to be opened only upon confirmation of Alara's survival and identity. Adrian's smile was sharp. The one that might change everything about how the Sterling fortune is currently distributed. Another silence. Longer this time. You're playing a dangerous game, Adrian.
No, Richard.
I'm finishing one. Victoria started it 18 years ago when she told me she thought someone in the family was trying to kill her. You remember that conversation, don't you? The one you had with her about your gambling debts? About how desperately you needed money. How dare you? 72 hours, Richard. Then we'll all know the truth. I suggest you spend that time getting your affairs in order. Adrian hung up. Alara was shaking. He's the one. The one who orchestrated it. Probably. But I can't prove it yet. The accident investigation was closed quickly, suspiciously so. And Richard had motive. He inherited control of the company, paid off his debts, and has been living very comfortably ever since. Adrian stood, paced. But if you're confirmed as Alara, if Victoria's sealed will says what I think it says, Richard loses everything. What does the will say? I don't know. Victoria sealed it with instructions that it only be opened if you were found alive. I've held it in my firm's vault for 18 years, waiting. The weight of it all crashed over Alara. What if I don't want this? What if I just want to disappear, start over somewhere quiet, live a normal life? You can't. Not anymore. Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. Serafina knows. Richard knows. By tomorrow morning, half of San Francisco's elite will know someone claiming to be Alara Sterling has surfaced. You're not invisible anymore, Alara. For better or worse, you're about to become the most watched woman in California. I don't know how to be that person. You'll learn. I'll help you.
He paused.
Victoria left me a letter, along with the will. One instruction was very clear. If Alara is found, protect her from the family until she's strong enough to fight them herself. That's what I intend to do. A knock on the office door interrupted them. Adrian opened it. His assistant stood there, looking worried. Sir, we have a problem. The story leaked. It's already hitting social media. Adrian swore.
How?
Serafina, Thorne posted about it an hour ago. Claims a con artist is impersonating the Sterling heir with your help. It's going viral. Adrian pulled up his phone. The post was there, shared thousands of times already. Breaking. Corporate attorney Adrian Sterling, manager of the Sterling Global Fortune, has allegedly been fooled by a homeless girl claiming to be the long-dead Alara Sterling. Sources close to the situation say the girl, a former maid with a history of mental instability, has fabricated evidence and manipulated Sterling for financial gain. This desperate fraud is an insult to the memory of Victoria Sterling and her daughter. Full story coming soon. #Sterling scandal, #fake heiress, comments flooded beneath it. Most sided with Serafina. Called Alara a con artist, a liar, a scammer. Some were crueler. Of course the orphan thinks she's a princess. Delusional. Another homeless person trying to steal from hardworking, wealthy people. Throw her in jail. Alara read them, each comment a knife. She's destroying me before I even have a chance to prove who I am. That's the goal. Discredit you publicly so, when the DNA results confirm your identity, people have already made up their minds that you're lying. Adrian was already typing. But two can play that game. What are you doing? Releasing a statement. With the hospital records, the police report about the abandoned baby, and a high-resolution image of the locket with his sterling crest. His fingers flew across the keyboard. If she wants to make this a public battle, we'll give the public actual evidence instead of speculation. Won't that make it worse? Possibly. But it will also put pressure on Richard to respond. And when he does, he'll make mistakes. Powerful people always do when they're cornered. Adrian posted the statement from Sterling Global's official account. Within minutes, it had more engagement than Serafina's post. The narrative was shifting, but it was also getting louder, messier, more dangerous. Alara's phone buzzed. She didn't have many contacts, but somehow messages were coming through. Unknown numbers. You're pathetic. Stop lying for attention. I hope they arrest you for fraud. And then one that made her blood run cold. I know where you are. Sterling Building. Top floor. You can't hide. You'll pay for what you're doing to this family. Adrian saw her face, took the phone, read the message. That's a direct threat. I'm calling security and the police. He was already moving. You're not leaving this building until we know you're safe. For how long? 48 hours? 72? Forever? Alara's voice rose. I've gone from one prison to another. At least at Thorn Manor, I knew the rules. The rule here is that you're protected. That's it. That's the only rule. Adrian stopped in front of her. I know you're scared. I know this is overwhelming, but you have to trust me. Just for a few more days. Until the DNA test confirms everything. Then we go public properly. We claim the inheritance, and we have the resources to fight back. And if the test is wrong, it won't be. But if it is, Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then I'll still protect you. I'll still make sure you're safe and have a future. You're not going back to being homeless, Alara. Not ever. I promise you that. The sincerity in his voice made something break in Alara's chest. For the first time in 18 years, someone was fighting for her. Not because they had to. Not because they were paid to. But because they believed she mattered. She wanted desperately to believe him. But 48 hours felt like a lifetime when the whole world was watching. And somewhere in the city, Richard Sterling was making plans of his own. Plans that would make Serafina's cruelty look like kindness. This is it. This is the moment where everything goes public. The world is watching. Serafina is attacking. Richard is planning something terrible. And Alara is trapped between her past and a future she can barely imagine. If you are not subscribed right now, I genuinely don't understand what you're waiting for. This story is about to explode. The DNA results are coming. The sealed will is about to be opened. And someone is threatening Alara's life. You need to be here for every single second. Hit subscribe like you mean it.
Destroy that like button.
Comment and tell me what you think Richard is planning. The DNA results came back in 36 hours, not 48. Adrian opened the sealed envelope with Alara watching, her heart hammering so hard she thought she might pass out. He read. His face went white. What? Alara whispered. What does it say? You're her. Confirmed. 99.9% biological match to Victoria Sterling. Adrian looked up, his eyes bright. You're Alara Sterling. You're the heir. Alara should have felt joy, relief, validation. Instead, she felt the ground drop from beneath her. But there's more, Adrian continued, his voice shaking. The lab ran an extended family panel. Standard procedure for inheritance cases. He handed her the paper. Richard Sterling isn't your uncle. What? According to this, Richard has zero genetic relation to you. which means he's not Victoria's brother, which means he lied about who he was. Alara's mind raced.
How?
I don't know. But if Richard isn't actually family, then everything he inherited, everything he's controlled for 18 years, was obtained through fraud. Adrian was already pulling up files. We need to find out who he really is and how he convinced everyone he was Victoria's brother. His computer pinged. An email from an unknown sender. Adrian opened it. A single line of text and an attachment. Richard Sterling died in 1962. The man you know stole his identity. Proof attached. He killed Victoria. And he's coming for Alara next. A friend, the attachment was a death certificate. Richard Sterling, aged 6 months, died of pneumonia in 1962. 20 years before, Richard Sterling appeared claiming to be Victoria's long-lost brother. Adrian and Alara stared at each other in horror. "He's not your uncle," Adrian said. "He's an imposter. And he's been living off your inheritance for 18 years. And if he finds out we know..." The lights in the building went out. Emergency systems failed. They were plunged into absolute darkness. And somewhere in that darkness, footsteps approached. "Don't move." Adrian's voice was barely a whisper in the darkness. "Stay behind me." The footsteps grew closer, measured, confident. Someone who knew exactly where they were going. Alara's hands shook. She pressed against the wall, trying to make herself invisible again, the old survival instinct kicking in. The emergency lights should have activated. The backup generators should have kicked in within seconds. But they were still in darkness, which meant this wasn't an accident. Someone had deliberately cut the power. Adrian Sterling. The voice came from the doorway. Male, older, cultured.
I'm disappointed.
"I thought you were smarter than this." "Richard," Adrian said. "Or should I call you by your real name?" A flashlight clicked on, blinding them. Behind it, Alara could make out a figure. Late 60s, expensive suit, holding something in his other hand. A gun. "My real name doesn't matter," Richard said. "What matters is that you've made a terrible mistake. You found the girl. You did the test. And now you both know too much." "The test is already filed with the court," Adrian said. "Killing us won't change that. Won't it?"
Un tragique accident.
A fire, perhaps, in the Sterling building. A short circuit. Corporate attorney and delusional girl both killed. DNA evidence destroyed. Such a shame. Richard's smile was visible now as he stepped closer. "I'll mourn publicly, of course. Talk about how you were taken in by a con artist, how the stress drove you both to tragedy. The story will die within a week. People know she's here. People know a homeless girl claimed to be Alara Sterling. When she vanishes, they'll assume she ran away when the fraud was exposed. No one cares about missing orphans, Adrian. You should know that." Alara's blood ran cold. He was right. She'd been invisible her whole life. One more missing girl wouldn't make headlines. "You killed Victoria," Adrian said, trying to keep Richard talking. "You stole her brother's identity and ingratiated yourself into her life. Then you staged the accident. Victoria was brilliant but naive. She actually believed I was her brother, even though she'd never met him. One DNA test when Richard was an infant kept in family records, and I was able to replicate it. Paid the right people, forged the right documents." Richard's voice held pride. "I spent 5 years gaining her trust before I made my move. And the baby was supposed to die in the crash. But the girl survived, got pulled out by a passerby before the car went into the water. I had to adapt quickly. Hospital drop-off, anonymous abandonment. I thought she died years ago in the foster system. He looked at Alara. But you're resilient, like your mother. That's unfortunate. You won't get away with this, Alara said, finding her voice. The email, the evidence. Sent from your computer, Adrian. Tragic how the guilt drove you both to this. Richard raised the gun. I really am sorry, but $7 billion is worth a few more deaths. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Alara screamed. Adrian fell, and Richard turned the gun toward her. Your turn. But before Richard could pull the trigger, the emergency lights blazed on, and the office door crashed open. FBI, drop your weapon. 6 agents in tactical gear flooded the room, weapons drawn. Richard spun, but he was surrounded in seconds. The gun ripped from his hand, his face pressed against the floor. Alara collapsed against the wall, shaking. One of the agents rushed to Adrian, who was clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers. I'm fine, he gasped. Shoulder. Just the shoulder. You're not fine, you idiot, Alara choked out, crawling to him. You're shot. Bulletproof vest under the shirt, he managed. Caught the edge, but the vest took most of it. The lead agent approached them. Miss Sterling? Mr. Sterling? Are you both all right? How did you know? Alara asked. The email you received wasn't from a friend. It was from us. We've been investigating Richard Hastings, his real name, for 2 years. Identity fraud, murder, corporate espionage. When Mr. Sterling's assistant contacted us about the DNA results and the threats, we moved fast. The agent smiled. We've been in the building for the last hour, waiting for him to make his move. You used us as bait, Adrian said. We protected you. There's a difference. Vest, armed agents in the stairwell, surveillance on every entrance. We knew he'd come. Men like Hastings always do. Richard was hauled to his feet, handcuffed, his face twisted with rage. This isn't over. I have lawyers. I have resources. You have nothing, the agent said. We have 18 years of financial fraud, a murder confession recorded on wire, and enough evidence to put you away for life. It's over. As they dragged Richard out, he locked eyes with Alara. You're still nobody, he spat. A scared little orphan playing dress-up. You'll never be worthy of the Sterling name. And something inside Alara snapped. Not with fear. Not with doubt. With rage. I'm Victoria Sterling's daughter, she said, her voice ringing clear and strong. I survived everything you did to destroy me. I survived abandonment, abuse, 18 years of being invisible. And now I'm taking back everything you stole. She stepped closer, no longer afraid. You tried to erase me, but I'm still here. And you're going to prison knowing that the scared little orphan you tried to kill is now a billionaire. That's who's nobody now. Richard's face twisted, but the agents pulled him away. Alara stood in the center of the office, blood on her hands from helping Adrian, her whole body shaking. But she was standing, fighting, finally claiming who she was. That, Adrian said, wincing as paramedics worked on his shoulder, was incredible. I'm tired of being afraid, Alara said.
Good.
Because in about 12 hours, the story breaks. The real story. And you're about to become the most famous woman in America. Then let's make sure I do it right. She'd been invisible for 18 years. Time to be seen. The courtroom was packed. 3 weeks after Richard's arrest, his trial had become a media sensation. But today wasn't about him. Today was the formal reading of Victoria Sterling's sealed will and the legal recognition of Alara as the rightful heir. Alara sat at the plaintiff's table in a tailored navy suit, the silver locket visible at her throat. Adrian beside her, arms still in a sling. Across the aisle sat Richard's defense team, and behind them, in the gallery, Serafina Thorne. She'd been subpoenaed to testify about Alara's identity and treatment. She sat rigid, furious, her designer clothes unable to hide the desperation beneath. The judge entered. "We're here for the matter of the Sterling estate and the verification of Alara Sterling as legal heir. Mr. Sterling, you may proceed." Adrian stood. "Your Honor, I present DNA evidence confirming that the young woman before you is biologically Alara Sterling, daughter of Victoria Sterling. I also present Victoria's sealed will, held in trust for 18 years, with explicit instructions to be opened only upon proof of her daughter's survival." The judge examined the documents, then nodded. "The DNA evidence is conclusive. Ms. Alara Sterling, please stand." Alara rose on shaking legs. "This court officially recognizes you as Alara Sterling, sole heir to the Victoria Sterling estate valued at $7.3 billion. All assets currently held by the imposter Richard Hastings are hereby transferred to you, effective immediately." The gavel came down. Alara swayed. Adrian caught her arm, steadying her. $7 billion.
Real.
Legal.
Hers.
The judge continued. "I'm also issuing a warrant for the arrest of Serafina Thorne on charges of labor trafficking, abuse, and fraud related to her treatment of Miss Sterling." Serafina shot to her feet. "This is absurd. I had no idea who she was. You abused a vulnerable young woman in your care regardless of her identity," the judge said coldly. "Bailiff." Two officers moved toward Serafina. She looked at Alara, her face twisted with hatred. "You're still nothing. You'll never be worthy of that fortune. You're just a pathetic orphan playing dress-up." "No." Alara's voice cut through the courtroom. "I'm Victoria Sterling's daughter. I'm a survivor. And I'm the woman who's going to make sure you face consequences for every person you've ever hurt." She stepped closer to the barrier separating them. "You thought you could break me.
Starve me.
Make me believe I was worthless. But all you did was make me stronger." Alara's voice was steel. "I'm taking my $7 billion, and I'm using it to help every person like me that monsters like you tried to destroy. You wanted to make me invisible. Instead, you made me unstoppable." The officers handcuffed Serafina, who was now trembling with rage and fear. As they led her away, she looked back once. Alara stood tall, surrounded by cameras and reporters. The lost heir finally found, the maid now a billionaire. And Serafina Thorne, the cruel mistress, was led away in handcuffs to face justice. The irony was perfect. The victory was complete. And Alara Sterling's new life was just beginning. Part 9. Satisfying conclusions. 6 months later, Alara Sterling stood in front of Thorne Manor for the first time since the night Adrian had taken her away. The estate had been seized by the bank, foreclosed, and sold at auction. Alara had bought it, not for herself, for the Victoria Sterling Foundation. The manor was being converted into a residential facility for aged-out foster youth. 50 beds, full support services, education programs. Everything Alara had needed and never received. "You could have let it rot," Adrian said beside her. He'd recovered fully from the gunshot, though he still favored his left shoulder on cold days. "I could have," Alara agreed. "But then she'd still have power over me. This way, I take the place that represented my worst nightmare and turn it into someone else's hope. They walked through the entrance hall. The marble floors Alara had scrubbed on her hands and knees now gleamed under the feet of construction workers installing accessibility ramps and modern heating. The servants' quarters where she'd frozen were being converted to counselor offices. The grand ballroom where she'd served champagne to people who looked through her was now a community space. Every corner of Serafina's empire transformed. "She's going to prison for 8 years, Adrian said. "The labor violations, the fraud charges, the abuse. They gave her the maximum." Good. Alara had testified at the trial, told her story calmly, clearly, without emotion. Watched Serafina try to maintain her composure and fail. The woman who'd seemed so powerful, so untouchable, had been revealed as exactly what she was, a bankrupt bully who'd tortured someone weaker to feel strong. Now she had nothing. No money, no manor, no power. Just 8 years in a cell to think about what she'd done. "Do you feel better?" Adrian asked, "now that she's facing consequences?" Alara considered. "I feel free. That's better than revenge." They returned to the car, where her assistant waited with the day's schedule. Meeting with foundation staff, interview with Forbes, dinner with foster care advocates. Alara Sterling's life was unrecognizable from 18 months ago. But as they drove through San Francisco, passing homeless youth on street corners, Alara saw herself in every face. "Stop the car," she said suddenly. A girl, maybe 16, sat on church steps with a backpack. Exactly where Alara had been. Alara got out, walked over. "Hi," she said. "Are you okay?" The girl looked up, suspicious. "Why do you care?" "Because I've been where you are, and I want to help." Alara handed her a card. "This is a safe house. Free housing, food, support.
No strines.
Just help." "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't. Trust is earned. But I'm Alara Sterling. You might have seen me on the news. I was homeless too, and I meant what I said about helping." The girl took the card, studied Alara's face. "You really were homeless?" "For years." "I know what it's like to be invisible, to have everyone look past you like you don't exist." Alara smiled. "But you do exist. You matter. And if you come to that address, I'll prove it." The girl nodded slowly. Maybe I will." As Alara returned to the car, Adrian was smiling. "You're going to save them all, aren't you?" "I'm going to try." The car pulled away. Alara looked back at the girl on the church steps, still holding the card. Seeing her. Really seeing her. The way someone had finally seen Alara. And in that moment, Alara Sterling understood what her $7 billion was really for. Not revenge. Not luxury. Not power. But making sure no one else ever felt invisible again. That was the real inheritance. That was victory. This is the ending we all needed. From Maid to Billionaire. From invisible to unstoppable. From abuse to freedom. Alara took everything Serafina tried to destroy her with and turned it into power to help others. If this story moved you, if it gave you chills, if you believe that good can win and the powerless can rise, then you absolutely must subscribe right now. Hit that button. Like you mean it. Smash that like button into oblivion. Share this with someone who needs to know they matter. Comment and tell me, what would you do with $7 billion? Because stories like this, about justice, transformation, and using power for good, this is what we're all about.
Subscribe.
Like.
Share.
And remember, You are not invisible. You matter. Your story matters. And your victory is coming. Let's go change the world together.